Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 458. At least I think it is anyway. This is a DC Comics podcast. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Hey, what's up?
This is a DC Comics podcast. I said that already. I usually say that in the first bit, so now I'm thrown off. Like, what do I say now? But I guess I'll just tell you what's coming on today's show, everyone. We've got Superman Unlimited issue 1, we got Detective Comics 1097, we got Batman Superman World's Finest 39, we got Wonder Woman 21, Nightwing 126, Absolute Flash issue 3, Batman and Robin Year 1 issue 7, The New Gods issue 6, and surprisingly we also have Black Canary Best of the Best issue 6. I say surprisingly because I did not realize that had not already been on the show. Someone mentioned it on Discord yesterday and said that we hadn't reviewed it yet. And I went, what are you talking about? I read that the week it came out. Seemingly, I just forgot to put it on the list. And, well, Connor's useless and didn't notice because he wasn't reading that one. So I just never talked about it. But I made sure Matt read it, though, so that we can both talk about it.
Yep, we're good.
So, yeah, that's coming up today on the show. And I will have Patreon books next week. Not that it's that much later, but it's been a long day. It's been a long week, actually. I've been so sleep deprived this week. It is unreal. It's like, I feel like this happens every year when it starts getting really warm in May, where my body just like takes time, where it's like, it's too hot to sleep more than 2 or 3 hours in one sitting. Like after that, you're just uncomfortable and you're getting up no matter what, no matter how crap you feel, you're just awake now for at least 12 hours.
Yeah, and to all the Americans, leave the people across the pond alone about the temperatures, because their houses are built different. They're built to keep the warmth in. All right, too many times when it starts heating up, I see people over here be like, "Oh, it's 76 degrees. You know, open a window," and I'm like, "No, it's not that simple. Just let them be. It sucks, man. The heat sucks for everybody."
Yeah, yeah. Everything's built here to survive the winter, so summer's kind of an afterthought, bizarrely.
We hit our first triple digits here in Vegas this week, and let me tell you, I did not miss it.
Well, Matt, we're on Celsius. If we ever hit triple digits, things have gotten very bad.
Yes. Well, yeah. But yeah, here we hit our first 100-degree day. Was not fun. I mean, today playing football, it was about 90, but we had clouds, but it was that kind of, it's not hot enough. Like, it's hot enough to sweat when you're running, but not enough that you keep it sweaty, so you're not getting the cooling effect of the sweat. So it was just miserable all around. But, you know, that's part of living in the desert. You know, you give and you take. It's mostly a take, though. You know, I can't think of much benefits. I mean, winter's not bad. So I guess there's that. Welcome to
the sweat cast, everyone. We're here to talk about sweat and heat and whatever else. But no, we got books to talk about. Obviously, we had Solicits last week. We had the trailer last week, so it was a very news heavy episode last week. There's one little thing this week, but nothing particularly enticing. But we won't waste too much time today. We'll get straight into it. We'll look at the Kindle rankings, the list formerly known as the Comicsology Top 10. And Matt, have you got a guess for what's currently number 1 from this week's books?
No, there was a new number 1. There's also an absolute. I don't really know what's going on over at Marvel right now. So I'm gonna throw out a guess, and I'm gonna guess it's Superman Unlimited.
That is incorrect.
That is it Absolute Flash?
That is incorrect.
What? Oh my goodness, I wasn't ready to have a backup guess. I'll go for Marvel. Is it Ultimates 12?
It is Ultimates 12. That's number 1. Is this the first? I'd have to go back and not check the site because they'll change now. But like, go back and check the episode if this is the first time an Absolute book wasn't number 1 on a week where an Absolute book came out. That said, though,
weird.
It's not falling that far from grace. It's number 2. Absolute Flash is number 2. Number 3 is Superman Unlimited. Number 4 is World's Finest. Number 5 is Amazing Spider-Man. Number 6 is Wonder Woman. 7 is New Gods, which I think is quite good for a New Gods book.
Hey, let's go.
Number 8 is Exceptional X-Men. Number 9 is DC Sonic the Hedgehog. And then number 10 is Detective Comics. So that rounds out the top 10. Yeah, a bit more DC in there than Marvel, for sure. So pretty healthy. And then just a little bit outside the top 10 at number 12 is Batman and Robin Year 1. That's the sort of one though that'll sell, the hardcover and stuff will sell for years on that one, so that's neat. Nightwing is down at 16, which is not terrible, but I do wish that was a bit higher because I do quite like the run, but it is what it is. So yeah, there you go. That's the Kindle rankings for the week. But yeah, and I mentioned there was one little news thing. I doubt it's anything either of us are ever going to look at. But DC Go has announced 6 new digital first webcomics, which are going to be coming out over July. So there's, just to quickly run down what these are, we've got Warriors and We Wonder by Stephanie Williams. We've got Aquaman, Yo-Ho, Hold On to Your Hook by Josh Trujillo. We've got John Kent, This Internship Is My Kryptonite by Sam Camp. We have Taste of Justice by Andrew Aiden. We have My Little Warlord by Nina Gee. And we've got The Magical Mysteries of Shazam by Steve Orlando. So there's actually full solicits for all of these webcomics. So if you want to check out those, you can go and dig in for yourself. Will I ever get DC Go and look at any of these? Most likely not, if I'm honest. But
the Aquaman title does crack me up. So that's pretty funny. I don't know if it's gonna be good, but it's funny.
I do not know. But I mean, it seemed worth mentioning at the very least. It's the sort of thing, if I just ignored it and Connor was here, he'd start whinging and being like, "Oh, you missed something."
Hey, there's a thing over here. I'm like, all right, cool, man. You tell us about it then.
I've done it. Due diligence.
And then we make a mistake of giving. Yes, but then that's where we make the mistake of giving him the microphone. We have to listen to him. You know.
So yeah, that's the news. So we can get into the books here. Superman Unlimited issue 1, Dan Slott writing with Rafael Albuquerque on the art. So the first chunk is, I remember us actually theorizing last week when we got that Free Comic Book Day issue, or a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was. That this feels weird that this is the Free Comic Book Day thing, because like, how do you read issue 1 after this without having read this? Turns out it was just the first 10 or 12 pages of issue 1. That said, if you did already read it, one, that was free, so it's not a big deal. But they actually, this is an oversized issue 1 though, so there's actually still a full issue's worth of pages after what you already read in that Free Comic Book Day special. So there's still a full meal here, as it were, in terms of value, I suppose. But it is a little strange, just because it's something you've already read some of, if you'd read the Free Comic Book Day thing.
Yeah. I messaged Pete last night because I started reading this. And I was like, oh, remember we were talking? The first half is just the Free Comic Book Day. So, Yeah.
But like I said, there's still like 20 pages after the Free Comic Book Day stuff. So yeah, the ending of that, just for anyone who's forgotten, was there's a giant meteor of some kind or whatever, but the shell breaks off and it's actually a big ball of kryptonite coming towards Earth, and that was the big cliffhanger at the end of the special. So once we go on from there, it's basically just Superman having to grit his teeth and try and push it and change its directory, because if he doesn't, it's going to hit Rio de Janeiro, right? Because he can actually sense where it's going to go. So he's like, shit, I need to move this out of the way. And I have to admit, like, see when he first starts like having his life flash before his eyes, and we get Jor-El and Lara and Krypton exploding, I was sort of thinking to myself, I can almost hear the pearls hit the alley ground, because we're doing the beats of the origin yet again. But I will say,
and they're using the same shot list too. Like, just change it up a little bit, guys. Yeah, that's all.
It's. Do you know the funny thing is I was being a little bit moody and critical about it as it was starting, but it kept going, right? They do a full kind of like life of Superman up until this point recap. It very much exists for someone who's not read Superman in a long time to be able to pick this up and get a full recap of what the current continuity of Superman is. And it goes through the fact that we're doing Superboy stuff again in Smallville, and it's going through kind of his first encounters with Lois and Lex and all that stuff, the first time he encounters Kryptonite. It goes through all the highlights of his life, going to the Fortress for the first time, all that stuff. And even obviously gets to the point where he's got John as a son and all the rest of it. So, I mean, I didn't hate it because I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting to see what the current continuity is and sort of clean some of that up. That said, though, there is a couple things that I do have a little bit of an issue with. One thing's not new or surprise. I've made it very clear that I'm not super fond of him being Superboy when he's a kid before he becomes Superman. I think it diminishes from when he becomes Superman. But there's a little knock-on effect of that I didn't think about until this issue brought it up, which is that Lois didn't name him anymore because the name just evolved from Superboy, so Lois didn't name him Superman, and I don't like that. That sucks.
They can still have it that she's the first one to call him Superman, though, right?
I mean, the way they presented it here did not imply that. Because you see, like, the first time that they've got Superman in the headlines, and it sounds like Clark wrote the article, so I don't think she did name him.
That stinks. I didn't think about that.
Because she even compliments him and sort of jokes about how, oh, you got this big story because you realised this was Superboy from Smallville grown up.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. I didn't like that either.
Yeah.
I read this right before I went to bed last night, so some of it got memory hold. Yeah, also him writing the article about the first appearance of Superman is kind of unethical to me. Clark. All right, this isn't Spider-Man taking pictures, right? Peter Parker taking pictures of Spider-Man to make the rent. This is him going, oh, hey, look. Although he did tell Jimmy where to stand so Jimmy could get the picture, you know?
That's something. Yeah, that's the one thing of the current continuity, aside from the Superboy stuff itself, that I'm not super into. But it is kind of nice seeing him bring up, like, you know, all the various beats of the life, meeting the Justice League and fighting Doomsday. Also, it does clarify as well is that after he fought Doomsday, or specifically after he came back from death, if you will, that's when all of his memories of visiting the future came back. He specifically points out, oh, that's when all the memories of the Legion of Superheroes and all that stuff came back. So it's like, okay, it's fine. I mean, he does mention that before then, he did have this overall sense of that he was destined for something important, and he kind of interprets that as he could, like, somehow subconsciously remember that he's going to be important from the future, but whatever.
Yeah, so because he talks about when he goes off to the Legion of Superheroes to the, you know, to the 30th century, that Saturn Girl had put blocks in his memory, but there's one thing that kept showing through, and that was the Superman statue of the eagle. They get of him with the eagle. It gets put up. They call it the Centennial statue after he, you know, quote, dies fighting Doomsday. So I do like that was just a piece of something that was in his memory, you know. And then once he comes back from the Doomsday and he sees it, it unlocks that memory. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I wonder if we'll get some more of that kind of thing going forward.
Where are you getting this idea that he could remember that image the entire time?
So when he talks about, you know, he goes, was that supposed to be me, right? He goes, yeah, so sometimes in my future I get an eagle. And then when it gets through, then he sees the Centennial statue. He's erected. He goes, I remember it all now. I never did get that eagle.
Yeah, so
right?
what part? Yeah, but what part of that implies he could remember this image of the statue the entire time?
It's just the way that he was going about the memories. That's how I read it. Was that there was something there, like you were talking about, you know, but he couldn't put his finger on, but it was seeing that statue that.
Yeah, the statue triggers the memories, but I don't think he could see something that entire time. I think it was just a sort of sense of importance that he could feel the entire time.
Right.
That's what I'm picking you up on, because I don't think that the book implied that he could see that throughout. But this is the sort of murky thing. Joe, there's the problem with this conversation, though, Matt, is that all of this is just putting stitches over plot to explain why the whole Superboy thing's possible. Because otherwise, all this visiting the Legion stuff is just a complete mess that doesn't work. So we have to patch it all up to say that he doesn't remember it. So we have to fix it. It creates all these plot problems that we have to fix with this. This is comic books at their most messy, I guess, I'll say.
Yes. Well, and that's why the people that don't like continuity is for this messiness, right? But there's a reason why when Waid brought the Legion back in 2004 with the 3-boot Legion, he got rid of the Superman visiting aspect of it, right? They used the idea of Superman to fulfill the Legion, you know? And I think even Waid knew at that time that's why. Because, like, yeah, you start picking on this thread and it starts to unravel the sweater. So,
okay,
and someone that likes the Legion, what's up?
Yeah, but why is he the one bringing this all back then? Because he's the one doing it in Action Comics.
I know. That's the funny thing. I don't understand. You know, because even he was back then, maybe he was told he couldn't, right? Maybe he was told the 3-boot had to be in its own thing. I don't know. But yeah, even as a Legion fan, it is a bit murky and a bit irritating for all of this, you know? So,
yeah. So, you know,
I also, what?
Nah, you go, Matt.
I was gonna say just also the idea of this big meteorite that had it's kryptonite, but it had that metal that they end up using for time stuff. I kind of like that idea. That's kind of what's triggering this memory, like not actually in the story, but in here in the comic. I kind of like that idea that it's this metal that's going to be used in the future is kind of what we're using to go back and tell Superman's origin, you know, so it doesn't feel as just like Superman, this is your life. It's flashing before his eyes. You know, and then you tie back the Legion and all that other stuff. So Slott's trying something. I don't know if he's necessarily executing it well, but yeah, it's very messy.
No, I mean, I think I have no problem with the way this is written, and it flows well enough. It's just there's no way to judge what this book is yet, because this first issue is just a recap of who Superman is, and I mean the way it's phrased, like the wording is all fine. Albuquerque's art is pretty solid. There is a couple of Justice League members who look a bit weird in his art style, but it's just kind of like a clash of like who they are in his art style rather than his art not being good.
I think Hot Girl looks really cool, and I think Flash looks really weird.
Yeah, Flash looks weird. That was the one that stuck out to me.
Yeah. Batman looks good though.
So the big thing here is that he changes the trajectory of the big kryptonite meteor, but realizes that it's going to hit a couple of fishermen. So he's like, "Oh no, I have to like go back in. I have to try and rechange it again." And he genuinely thinks he's going to die. And this is the part of the book that I think is genuinely quite good. Is that he basically thinks that he thinks he's going to die, and he decides to try and basically just say something to Jonathan in hopes that Jonathan can hear him, because he's the only one that maybe could. And well, other than Kara, I guess, I suppose. But you know, he's going to speak to his son. Right. It makes sense. So you know, he says, "Hey, say this to your mother for me," so on and so on. And there's a touch at the end where he basically starts quoting Jor-El from Superman the movie, which I thought was a really interesting. Oh, but obviously he swaps out Kal-El for Jonathan. He says they can be good people, Jonathan, if you let them. You know, I was like, okay, that's a nice little tug on the old nostalgia strings. I can't really be mad at it. But he wakes up on the watchtower. It's been about 3 weeks, or was it months or weeks?
3 months.
3 months. So he's been out for 3 months in a coma. Everyone's happy to see him. Jean Jones has been pretending to be him, so no one was wondering where Clark is.
I was so concerned with that, because you just see him walk through with Pa, and I was like, why is Clark Kent standing there? And then when the reveal was Manhunter, I was like, oh yeah, there's probably a better explanation than they split or whatever at the Impact. I was very worried for a hot second.
But yeah. We're doing that in Supergirl right now. We can't be doing that in one of the Superman books as well.
Right, that's why I got concerned. I'm like, what are we doing? But yeah, it's just John.
Yeah. So everyone, Justice League are all sort of welcoming him back. They're all happy to see him. I do kind of love that Batman is just straight to business. He's like, there's something you need to see. Like, he's not saying, oh, I'm glad you're back up, Clark. I'm glad you feel better. There's something you have to see right now. So basically what's happened in these months since he's been asleep is that this kryptonite meteor's hit, and it's become like a resource on Earth, and people are like trading in it, and there's a city that's completely now built out of kryptonite. And then Connor and Supergirl show up, and they're kind of beaten and bruised, and he's like, wait, what happened to you guys? He's like, this is kind of the new normal. Like, everyone's got kryptonite. Everyone can get their hands on it now. It's kind of rough out there. And then the ending, which they kind of imply, and they don't actually explain it in this last page. They just kind of like turn on a light, and he looks all kind of gold or whatever. But the implication...
It looks like the Centennial statue.
Oh, sure. The implication, though, is that he is now immune to kryptonite. At least that's how I read this. Is that something that happened with being buried by this meteor has, at least for the time being, made him immune to kryptonite, which is an interesting pivot I didn't see coming, because because I think we vaguely heard, kryptonite's going to be this big resource that everyone's trading in now. I think that was like one of the few things we heard about the book before it launched. You obviously assume a lot of things about how that'll affect Superman, but to sort of turn around and say that he's, for some reason, whatever the reason is going to be, is now immune, at least for a while, it's like, okay, well, that's strange, but all right, sure.
Yeah. So the island that has all this kryptonite buildings and whatnot, that was the small little area that he was trying to save the fishermen in. So likely this landed there, right? And they were able just to mine out of the sea all the kryptonite. That said, making your buildings out of kryptonite, we all saw what it did to Lex in the 90s. Right? That stuff's poison. So y'all, maybe these guys are on ticking clocks here.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was...
Honestly, Matt, I'm of two minds. Either that'll get addressed in plot because that's going to be a part of it, or it's going to be conveniently forgotten about that it eventually causes cancer. I mean, which way will it go? Who knows?
Yeah. But yeah, just the idea that there's a city of kryptonite sitting there and they're trading in it, and now it's a resource, and, it can only affect, it only has one, kryptonite really only has one use, and that's to take out Superman and the Kryptonians.
Well,
right. So now that
not necessarily. I mean, I think the whole point of this story is going to be that they'll have found other uses for it, and that's why everyone's wanting to buy it.
Maybe, but I don't know.
Maybe it's a really
feel.
Maybe it's a really good conductor or something. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know. I just feel like if any of these groups, want to have just in case a super ever goes rogue, I feel like it has a lot of value there in that. And I can also see Lex being upset because now that was his resource. That was his, corner. And now I have this little alienation.
I'm not disputing that lots of people, either because they're bad or because they just want to plan for the worst, want kryptonite. I'm saying that the fact that there's a city built out of it implies to me that they are finding other uses for it. At the very least, they say it is like a status symbol, kind of like building something out of gold, where it's like, hey, I built something out of kryptonite. Look at how fancy and rich I am. At the very least, I think that's going to be a factor. If not, there's something unique property-wise that makes it good for something other than just hurting Kryptonians. But
I mean, you got to think though too, if they use the Sunstone logic, right? Like we saw the Sunstone with him in the flashback or in the Superman This Is Your Life aspect of the fortress. If you look at some of these buildings and zoom in on them, they kind of have that Kryptonian architecture. So maybe they did unlock something in that, right? Because it looks like there's some of those symbols and stuff written on the buildings. So
what if there's what if there was something inside the big ball? Like, what if it wasn't just solid kryptonite all the way through? What if there was some other technology inside? Because I mean, it had a shell that was kind of disguising it in the first place,
right?
So maybe there's more to it inside as well.
So yeah, but yeah, him turning gold here at the end and looking like the statue, I thought was very funny because we made a big deal about the statue being this thing that kind of reminded him of his importance to the world, and now at the end of the issue, he's glowing gold. And it's like, well, what does this mean exactly? Did he just, absorb, what did he absorb to turn him like this?
Well, it's almost like there was a defense mechanism built into his body or something where he was confronted with so much kryptonite that this was the only way he'd survive. So if this was absolute Superman, I'd say it was Saul that did it. That Saul initiated some kind of anti-kryptonite defense. But obviously he doesn't have that, so I don't know.
Yeah. Because even Batman says, 3 months ago, a mountain of kryptonite fell on you. You should have been poisoned, crushed, and atomized. This is how you survived. And me and Clark both at the same time said, what? So a good cliffhanger.
Yeah, I will say, like, I feel it's obviously very inconsistent however they write how Kryptonians get hurt by kryptonite, because I feel like in my head, when I think of a Kryptonian getting hit by kryptonite, or hurt by kryptonite rather, it tends to be something where they're in pain when it's present, but once it's gone, they're fine. So this idea that Connor's in a sling because kryptonite somehow broke his arm for like a period of time is kind of weird to me.
Well, if you use it as it weakened him, right, and someone was able to break his arm because he was in a weakened state, But however, his body should have healed. You're right.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, Connor's also half human, so he doesn't have the full genetics.
Fine, but why does Kara have like a nose thing on?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe she's exfoliating. Maybe it's one of those nose things. Or breathe right strip. She's having some, breathing issues. We don't know.
Like, I will say this. I think the elements that it's doing here in this story so far, as much as it's hard to judge it yet, because most of this issue was just like a big recap of current continuity, I think I like these concepts way more than anything that Williamson's doing in Superman. So, at the very least, I'm kind of curious about where this is going. It's not let me down yet, so... And I feel like anything I didn't like about the continuity being changed is actually more to do with like what Waid's doing in action, and this is just kind of making it all fit together.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Slott some credit for trying to make everything work as concisely. So I feel like now that we did this, we don't have to worry about all that stuff, right? He can just tell the story about the kryptonite and how it's influenced Earth and the culture, and how it's gonna be dangerous to be a Kryptonian now. Right, because now it seems like kryptonite's everywhere, right? So you have to keep watching your backs, and it doesn't make them as super as they used to be. So I like that, and if we're gonna keep going on with that, that's good.
Yeah. All right. What are you rating Superman Unlimited?
7.5.
Yeah, I actually have to go with a straight 7 on this. I think it's a fine enough issue. I think it's definitely a very easy issue 1, and that it is very much designed not just for people who read comic books, but I think you could hand this issue 1 to someone who's never read a comic book, and it would be an onboarding place for Superman, like, for those people. Like, I kind of get it because there's a movie about to come out, and this is actually perfect to hand to someone who's never read a Superman comic before. So I can't really fault the logic behind it, and I think it's well enough written. Any faults I really have with it are just that there's maybe not enough meat in it, because to someone who knows a lot of this already, and to some of the things that they've changed continuity wise I don't love. But it's not really Slott's fault in this case. It's just kind of what they're doing broadly at Superman that I don't like.
Something we kind of skimmed over though too is the reason that Clark came to the Daily Planet is because of the stories Lois was writing when he was this mysterious figure, right? So he wanted to go there because it seemed like he had respect for her covering him. So I do like that thing. That thing there.
Yeah, that's not like that. I mean, maybe the way he phrases it a little bit new, but that's birthright, right? That's like, he's while he's training and growing up, he's helping people, and Lois is writing stories about this mysterious. It's birthright.
I love that. Birthright's my favorite Superman story, so that's right up that alley. But I do like that they, at least he goes to the Daily Planet for that reason. So, but yeah, we'll see where Slott goes. But so far, I have no issues with where the story's headed.
I'm intrigued. I'm at the very least intrigued. Once he starts getting into the meat of the story, though, let's see what he does with it and see where we're going. But for now, I have no major complaints from issue 1, other than just that it's very much for newcomers rather than it is for long-time readers. But hey, all right, cool. Detective Comics 1097, Tom Taylor writing with Lee Garbett on the art. Now, you may be initially upset because Mikel Janen's name's not there, but Lee Garbett's actually very, very good as well, so I wasn't actually that upset.
Yeah, Lee Garbett's very good. I quite like the art in this one. Going through and reading this week, I was like, man, I was telling my wife, it's going to be hard to pick art, because there's a lot of good books and a lot of good art this week. So
I'm sure your wife every week is waiting with bated breath, like with the updates to how the art's getting picked.
It wasn't so much, but I kept going back and looking at certain pages, and I was sitting on the floor. She was sitting above me on the couch. I call it my nook. It's usually where I watch hockey because I can't do any damage from the nook if I get mad. But she's sitting there and she was looking at my shoulder. She goes, "Why do you keep going back?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just looking at little art things." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know you looked at the art that carefully." I'm like, "Well, when the art's this good, I do, you know." But yeah, so I like Lee Garbett, and I thought for whatever reason it reminded me of Williamson's book Nailbiter, but that's a different artist. That's Mike Henderson, and I thought maybe Lee Garbett and him had some crossover, but it's not. There's have very similar styles. But, Garbett's very good. I tipping my hand a bit. I quite like this issue.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about the issue. It's okay to admit it. there's no reason to hold back.
I don't need too much, but the aspect of Bruce going to Bullock, and we're getting Bullock's side of this, and it almost becomes like an old school detective story, and stuff's getting revealed with crooked cops and all of this. It's definitely a total shift with the Sema and stealing blood and stuff. So the fact that for Bullock it's about a bunch of dead kids and he wants to make it right, like there's that good person inside of Bullock, and he's bothered that this got out of hand, So I like that being front and center.
Yeah, this obviously we're diving into the elixir stuff which was teased in the previous arc. We get them, torturing someone who has information, and the mysterious guy who's kind of like here, Ambrose is his name, the one that we saw before. He's like, okay, we're pulling out of Gotham. Anyone who knows anything in the city needs to be taken care of, but don't send our people. Get like independent contractors to do it. So they're kind of covering their tracks and they're trying to pull away because like too many questions are being asked. The fact that Batman's even heard their name exists is like a problem for them. So they're like, no, we're pulling out, because he says, oh, we're not going to return to Gotham for at least the rest of the century, which is a pretty bold span of time to talk about. So that sets up kind of that stuff, and then like you say, we get to the Batman and Bullock stuff where they both just kind of run into each other at the crime scene, which they point out is kind of like, the crime has been solved. They have the murderer, but they're both bothered because there's more to it. And this is what gets into the whole, okay, this group elixir, Batman starts talking about it. And much to his surprise, and to, I think, the reader's surprise, Bullock has a bit of a lead on this. He's like, wait a minute, I think I've heard this once before. And we get a flashback story to when Bullock was a rookie, and he was with his older partner, and they went into a house to check on an old person. We find out later he's 112 or something ridiculous like that.
Oof, yeah.
But Elixir and what looks like a young Ambrose is there as well. They're torturing this guy, and they basically tell the cops, hey, like, you've not seen anything, on you go. And Bullock's not going to accept it, but the partner steps in and effectively saves his life, because these guys would have just killed him to cover the tracks.
Yeah.
So we find out from this old partner and sort of Bullock recounting the story that there was a time that at least some of the corrupt police maybe didn't know who Elixir were really, but they at least like were being paid off by them to look the other way when they were, caught doing certain things or getting up to stuff in Gotham. And this was like, Bullock's like rude awakening, having to accept this payout, and like, all the cops were dirty and all that. So Batman's like, I want to hire you. You've got leads that I don't. You're a PI now. Dig up any dirt you can. And obviously, I think there's some natural, like, sort of suspense here, because the opening scene of this issue was the villain saying, hey, anyone who asks questions, like, take care of them. So we know that Bullock's getting put in danger here. He's on a path to something bad if he's successful. So, it becomes a Bullock detective story. He goes to, question various people around the city, eventually going to his old partner and catching up with him. I think what's interesting about this scene with the old partner, who's retired and on a boat, is he's a corrupt cop, and he was a corrupt cop in the flashbacks, but he also kept tabs on the Elixir because he didn't really like what they were having him do either. So he kind of comes across as a bit more shades of grey by the end, as opposed to just a villain, which I thought was a bit more interesting than anything else.
And I was like, look, I could have taken the money or I could have taken the bullet, right? At least I could keep track of things because I'm still alive. So it did the crooked cop thing, but it did it in such a way where it didn't make him seem like that bad of a guy. right? So, he still has Bullock's trust. So I do like that King, or not King, the other Tom, Taylor, is playing with that shades of gray aspect of it.
Yeah. So, this plays out, and then some goons come to get Bullock at his office, and Bullock fights back, but is unable to do so. And this is right after he sent a message to the number Batman gave him, which seems to redirect to Oracle by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And afterwards, Batman goes to his office. It's been ransacked. He's missing, and it's like, oh shit, like, where's he gone? And it's like, oh, the security cameras putting him in this van. It seems like they're going to this plane. And it's like, so Batman's basically chasing and launching out of his bat plane to try and save Bullock. But the misdirect at the end, and we get a cool little action scene of him jumping into the top of this truck and like coming down and taking out the bad guys. He pulls the hood off the prisoner, and it's not Bullock. Bullock's whereabouts is unknown. Instead, under the sack is one Oswald Cobblepot, and that's the cliffhanger, is that somehow he's been tricked and he actually ended up with Penguin. But it is interesting, though, because I totally buy that Penguin probably knew too much about Elixir, and they're coming after him too.
That's the first time we saw Elixir, right? Was they were going and messing with Oswald.
Yep. It makes
sense. The first time we saw Ambrose. So yeah. There was parts of here too that I really liked before Bullock goes off.
Sure.
Right? And that's the in his story, the way that Taylor and Garbett just show you enough of what they did to this 112-year-old man with like the fish hooks in his eyes and the skin pulling, but you never get a full picture of it. And it makes it that much more unnerving. So it takes Elixir from the shadowy group that's responsible for these kids' death to like, what kind of monstrosities are they doing? Like what type of people are they dealing with that would do this to a 112-year-old man? Like, and yeah, it just gave it this weird horror vibe, almost like body horror, and not quite Reanimator, right? But something along those lines. And it has me asking more questions of like, at first I thought maybe they're vampires, but like, what are they stealing? Are they stealing life force? Because if this guy was 112, right, were they investigating to see like what part of his DNA? And if that's the case, if this was all those years ago when Bullock, who we have to assume is older, right? Not quite as old as Gordon, but older than Bruce, when he was a rookie, like what were they onto way back then? So just one little scene has added so much, Well,
one thing to keep in mind here is the entire last plot was about stealing blood from young people to keep people living longer. So it's not like it's a stretch to think that they're doing something along those lines. I also just really like in the art here, like just things that we see all the time are presented in a different tone just to sort of fit the vibe, the sort of darker tone of the book. Because like when you first see Oracle, it goes to her and she's in silhouette against the clock tower and everything's green. It just has a bit more of an ominous vibe, even though there's no reason to make her seem ominous, but it just makes everything feel a bit, like we're doing covert stuff, we're doing spy stuff, we're getting into the dark side of Gotham, or not even Gotham, like just stuff it's mostly stuff outside of Gotham, really, that's invading Gotham.
And I also feel like we never get a good view of Batman, right? Like a couple with Bullock, but even that on that page where you talk about with Oracle on the side, when he swings through to go after the van, his face is all in shadow. So it adds that whole everything, a very mysterious
it's this
vibe to everything. And then
same when he's jumping on the truck as well. Like all the stuff on that page is all the faces all in darkness and silhouette and all that.
And then the opposite of that is that when you turn the page and Oracle's there looking at her screen and you're getting the reflection in her eyes, and she takes up like the lower, was that 2/3 of the page, and it's just such a different vibe than what we've gotten. It's like this extreme close up that's very clear. So just to show that she's how involved she is with this part of it too. There's a lot of cool storytelling going on.
Yeah, I mean it's that moment in like a movie where someone's sitting at a computer screen and you're just getting the reflection of the screens on their face. It just feels very intense. Like they're really locked in and helping with whatever's going on. It's good stuff. And the cliffhanger is an interesting one. Like you say, it makes sense based on Penguin's like small appearance in the previous arc. So there's a lot of long form storytelling going on here, where even though this arc instantly feels like it's got a different tone, there's a lot of things that were set up for it in the first one. So you know, it's good stuff. Like I mean, it's Taylor doing another long form story like he's Nightwing, although the tone of it entirely is very different than he's Nightwing, which is nice. So cool. And like we say, Garbett's art is very good. It a very different tone, and obviously we're saying the story's a bit darker in tone in general, which is saying something given that the last story had like children or teenagers being killed. But this just feels a bit more sinister, and I think that's the point, is they want the elixir to feel scarier, to feel like they're the big bad force that Bruce isn't taken on before. So really neat stuff. So what are you rating Detective Comics?
I'm going to 8.5.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. 8.5.
I thought you might go a little bit higher. That's why I'm like, is he gonna go? But no.
No, I think I'm happy with 8.5. I think there's room for it to grow, but I think it's at a very excellent level right now, as it is. So, cool. Batman Superman World's Finest issue 39. Mark Waid writing with Clayton Henry on the art. So this is the next part of our crossover here, which, you know, like, it took a bit of time setting up. The cliffhanger from last issue, from I think it was the annual, was the last one. We had young Robin transport time-wise to present day, and that's where we pick up this issue, which they do something interesting here immediately, where like Batman and Dick both get very confused, not because of the obvious reasons, but because Batman starts having like conflicting memories. Like, he remembers a world where Dick disappeared at that age and never came back, but he also still has memories of Dick growing up and becoming Nightwing. So it's clear that the timeline is getting really wonky, and it's kind of resetting in his brain, and it's like trying to make sense of it. But I will say that in a lot of ways, this might be my favorite issue of this arc so far. Mainly just because I feel like it's kind of clicking together a little bit more, and it's like, okay, once we get past the opening of dealing with the Dick stuff, and they sort of do the time cop rules where the two Dicks shouldn't touch each other. I'll just let that sentence sit there for a second.
Dicks can't touch the tips.
But they shake hands, and it causes like a time effect or whatever. And what happens that sets up the rest of the issue is that Batman, Superman, and Nightwing from present day go back to the world's finest part of the timeline, and Batman and Superman and young Robin from world's finest timeline are the ones that are now in present day. So we get a lot of the time fish out of water stuff, where, you know, the very first the first thing we get is like young Superman looking up and seeing Lois as Superwoman and being like, Lois, and then she calls him Clark and like says a few other things. Well, actually, even before we got into that, I love that he's like, she called me Clark. She knows who I am. What the hell? He's freaking out about that. But I loved Dick's reaction after she has a couple of lines, because here's what she says, right? She says, Clark, we have to get a move on. If you see our son, tell him to bring his boyfriend, Bruce, Tim. I don't understand the retro look, but you're needed too. And there's a panel where they're all silent, just staring. And then Dick says, at no point in that conversation could I have predicted the next word that was going to come out of her mouth. And I'm like, that was legitimately funny.
And then he goes, and who's Tim? And then he also has a throwaway line. He goes, how many Robins are there? He's horrified.
Yeah, that was in the other scene though. I think that was before they changed again, because someone says which Robin is this, and he's like, wait a minute, how many are there?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But no, I kind of love how zany it gets. Like this part right here, it adds some nice levity.
This stuff is pretty good. I mean, the fight in the villains is kind of whatever. I wasn't really feeling much one way or the other, but it's just fine. The big moneymaker though is because obviously the Batman, Superman, and Nightwing from the future or the present day obviously have more information to work with, because they remember this time period, so they at least know where they are and kind of like who they shouldn't talk to, and they shouldn't try and mess with the timeline and all those sort of things. So they run to the Batcave to try and like figure out what to do. They kind of just say hi to Dinah because she's like, who's this guy in blue? And like, it doesn't matter, Dinah, bye, because she's never seen Nightwing before, right? Yeah. So they go to the Batcave and they're trying to like, okay, do we have any time doohickeys that you've got in the Batcave? Can we get back to the present? And that's when Alfred walks in and asks if there's anything wrong. And that panel of both Dick and Bruce looking at each other in shock, it was perfect, right? I mean, I think one of the easiest ways to pull on the heartstrings if you're a Batman fan for the past like 3 years has been bring up Alfred in some capacity. And I think it's not just
done this multiple times in different ways.
Yeah, and it's not just the fact that they see Alfred. I think it's the fact that they're both there. See, if it was just Dick or Bruce, it would have an impact for sure, don't get me wrong. But the fact that they share this moment where they just look at each other because they both feel it at the same time, I think is what sold the entire moment. And then, of course, Superman's like, hey, guys, be careful, you can't mess with the timeline. And then Dick says, screw that, I'm hugging Alfred.
I beg your pardon, Master Bruce. Who on earth is this young man? Like, he doesn't even know that's an older Dick. So,
yeah. So Superman does rein them in a little bit, though, and says, we can't mess with things, let's pull back. So Superman intervenes, and then, there's more fighting, because Sinestro and the Scarecrow are fighting the younger versions in the present day.
Yeah. And Scarecrow has some fear gas, but also kryptonite, so it's affecting Superman. He's seeing things that, he doesn't want to see.
But, but, big thing there. Superman misinterprets something, though. He sees his coffin and thinks it's part of the fear toxin hallucination, and he says, that's how I knew, that's how I fought out of it, because there's no, that's just a cliche, I can't die, that's ridiculous. Yep. But obviously we know, no, that coffin's really there because he actually did die. So that's the thing. But so the present day characters are at the fortress to get a time bubble from the Legion or whatever they've got to try and get back to the present. Whilst this fighting continues in the present day with all the young versions of characters. This is confusing to talk about, but. Yes. Whilst this is all happening, though, the time bubble's almost getting back to the present. They encounter a problem, though. Grodd has put some sort of blocker in the time stream. So as they get hit with that, Sinestro fires the time gun at the young versions of the heroes. And the end of the issue is it's the young versions we see are kind of on a desert somewhere. We don't even know if they're on Earth. And they're like, where are we and when are we? Who knows? And that's where we end up. So for me, the comedy of them just hearing casual references to things from the future, and then the emotional beat with Alfred, I really like those two things. Like those two things really worked for me. And the plot's fine. The plot's like entertaining enough. Like there's definitely more going on here than any World's Finest storyline we've had in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I do love the timey-wiminess of it, right? With them swapping. And like you said, the fish out of water of it all. So, but no, that one scene with I could have never guessed what the next word she was going to say was. That was really solid.
Yeah, just, mention they've got a son, mention he's got a boyfriend, then calling him Tim. And what? None of this is making any sense. What's happening here?
It's really good stuff.
Oh dear. And then he doesn't even have time to process, wait, why is Lois flying? What's going on? And I don't even like the whole Lois being Superwoman thing, but it does make this bit funnier. So
for sure.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, I don't think this was ever going to be an all-timer like crossover event or anything, but I do think that it's felt like it's went to some fun enough places as it's went on. I've had a good enough time with each issue that I'm definitely not mad at it by any means.
Yeah. Well, and looking at the cover, right, it's a lot of the stuff that's happened in the last 6 years. So I'm glad that none of that stuff popped up. Right, it's just a cover. Because if the Batman Who Laughs or Perpetua, I might have thrown my iPad. Oh, so the fact that it stayed zany, I'm more than happy.
I genuinely I'm not looking at the cover just now. I genuinely don't know if I could have said who Perpetua was, like visually.
You don't remember Perpetua visually? That's the most thing I remember about her.
I don't know. I'm gonna go back and look at the cover again and see if I can but not because I know she's there now. Though it's probably going to be obvious which one it is. But still, I'm amused. I'm going to check. Oh, that's her at the top, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, she's very generic looking. I don't feel bad for not remembering how she looks. She looks really generic.
No. Yeah, and then you got the Amazos from the last one, and you got the dude that was responsible for Dark Crisis. I forget his name. But yeah, I was worried we were gonna go those places and we didn't get anywhere near, so I was more than happy.
Hey, there's still another couple of parts left, Matt. You may still get them yet.
True, I might speak too soon, but hopefully not.
Yep. All right, what are you giving World's Finest?
I'm just gonna give this a straight 7.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm gonna give it as well. I think it's. I had enough fun. Like, I'm not mad. It was good, but not great. So, hey. Wonder Woman issue 21, legacy number 821. Tom King writing with Guillem March on the art. So this is the second half of this little 2-part fill-in before we get back to the main story with the investigation of the
death of Ares.
Yeah, see, I was thinking of the afterlife though. Death and Mount Olympus. Huh? That's what I'm trying to think of. That's what.
Yes, they're on Mount Olympus.
That's what I'm trying to think of.
And Zeus has given Diana a ticking clock that if she can't figure this out before a time, then he gets to sacrifice Batman. It's like, man, Zeus, you suck.
Yes. Especially since he turns out to be the murderer the whole time, so it's like...
Yeah. He's supposed to murder. So this is, at least it is keeping, this is where sometimes I wish, granted with Connor, I know how much he hates Tom King, but I also know how much he likes Greek mythology. So Connor being able to, back up the old legends about how much Zeus actually sucks. This goes hand in hand with all of that. However, I do appreciate a good mystery with from King here with the way that it unravels and the reasons for it. It lines up with the themes that have brought us to this point in Wonder Woman about, masculinity and toxic masculinity and patriarchy and all that other type of stuff, that he made it fit in with this overall run in a fulfilling way.
Yeah, it's all right. It's like, I think there's a couple of nice moments and a couple of nice specific things that it does. I think the plot overall though, I'm just kind of, it's fine. Like I'm ho-hum about it for the most part. I think Bruce, his emotional talk with Diana about because she asks him how do you deal with being amongst gods all the time, and he basically just sort of compares himself to Steve and says, well, he did it, and so it's basically it's a nice little scene where he kind of bonds with her over who Steve was. I actually thought it was quite charming. And then the other big thing that happens in here, which might be a cause for some discussion or arguably controversy, is the idea that Wonder Woman herself can lie when the lasso is around her. I don't know if this has been a thing before. I don't think I've encountered it in a storyline before.
I don't think I have either. And they don't really clear anything up, right?
Not really. I mean, it's just... Yeah, I don't know. Because I think afterwards Batman says, hey, do you think I could, resist the lasso and still lie? And she's like, no. So I don't know if they're just saying because she's so special that she can do it.
This whole 9x9 grid, he said, I have the lasso around my body. He was right to believe me. And Batman's like, it doesn't work on you? I didn't know. She goes, no, it works very well. The weapon's magic is more powerful than Olympus, but not more powerful than you. She goes, you're doing well, Bruce. So she just kind of is like, we're not going to talk about it. So I wonder if that is something that we're going to get to the bottom of, or it's just something that we're going to sweep under the rug just so we had almost a Deus Ex Machina kind of moment. I don't know.
It feels like a big deal that should be explored if it's something they've got any plans for. And if they don't have plans for it, then it was kind of stupid to put it in here at all.
Yeah. Well, and just the fact that it was against Hephaestus, right? So Diana goes and starts talking to everybody, right? What leads to this moment is, she goes to Aphrodite and was like, Ares came to me not for any canoodling, but he was crying. And then essentially all the all the fights with Diana has taught him like the sanctity of life and him being the god of war. And it's everything started to weigh on him. And it's this interaction with Diana that's kind of changed him. And he was vulnerable. So he went to her to be vulnerable, right? And through this line, Aphrodite has her talk to, I think, Dionysus. And then Dionysus is like, well, no, but I sent him, I let Hephaestus know that his wife was, being vulnerable to Ares, so check with him, right? So that's what leads her to Hephaestus, and Hephaestus starts, he's had enough of Diana and starts going after her, including, what does he use? His hammer, right? And they have the fight. He has all his gadgets, and because he crafted the lasso, he's able to use this little clicky thing in his wrist, which I think is weird. I mean, it is magic, though, in order to unravel it, and that's where it starts to go. But
yeah, it does feel a bit weird to me that he's basically booby trapped everything he's made so he can take control of it later. That is a bit odd, but whatever. Yeah.
It's a bit odd. I mean, but it goes with Hephaestus, and him being like, I wasn't upset that they were canoodling. I don't even care about that. It's the fact that she went to him or he went to her so he could be vulnerable. I've tried to be vulnerable and she wasn't there for me. And it's almost like Zeus set him up for this because that's, I think it's, I got lost in the stuff going. Yeah, but either way.
I think a key thing to mention here is that it's kind of like, not a red herring per se, but this idea that there's an assumption that there would be some jealousy from Hephaestus because of like what we assume is like his wife having sex with Ares. But it turns out to not be that. It's him it's basically him going to her for therapy and saying, "Oh, all this murder and war I'm causing starting to make me feel really bad because Diana's taught me compassion. It's weird. I don't like it." So the big payoff to all this is that the reason why Zeus killed him is because Zeus doesn't like that he learned these things. He doesn't like that his son was less of a man and he's showing sympathy, and that's why he took him out. So yeah, that's kind of how it comes back to fitting into these like greater themes that we've been dealing with. Plus, there's a few other little things sprinkled throughout, like, someone at one point tells her, oh, that's the problem with having a woman here. They never understand how things work, and, like, Diana punches a column out of, like, the building or whatever. I did like the, when she goes to, I think it's Dionysus she's talking to, where she does the whole thing with a tiara, where she throws it in the air and says, hey, when that comes back down, it's going to disfigure your face, so you better tell me what I want to know. And I'm like, you've been taking some lessons from Batman with these tactics.
well, there's that, and Thor does that too with the hammer on multiple occasions. Where he's like, look, it's going to return to my hand, and regardless if you're there or not, it's going to go back. So I do like when these type of characters have a magical thing, but yeah.
She's not met him, though, so...
True.
It's probably more Batman's influence I'm willing to bet.
I mean, depending... No, because that isn't. I mean, yes, there's definitely Batman's influence. However, there was a whole arc where she did fight Thor back.
Yeah, but that's not Marvel Thor, and you're talking about Marvel Thor.
Yes, I am talking about Marvel Thor. He likes to do that with Mjolnir a lot. So, but yeah, that was a good. I also like the whole thing with Dionysus, and he's just a gossip, and Diana calls him out on that, right? Because he's the, he's the god of wine, and he's the god of pleasure, and like this type of stuff, and. He just likes hearing what everyone's been up to so he can spread it around. So again, it shows how messy the gods are, right? And that was, if you go back and read the Greek mythologies, they're very much reflective of human, condition. And they're not, immune to any of that stuff. And I like that Diana calls him out on that. So that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it boils down to just the few character moments that I like and a couple of fun bits that I also enjoy with the tiara or whatever it is. The ending of like Diana basically saying like, how do I go on after the death of Steve? How do you go on? Kind of thing to Batman, and he's like, it can be done just not alone, and they hold hands. I mean, it's a nice enough little ending. I like the idea that she's finally lost someone that was like close to her in a way that like now Batman can sort of like relate to her in some form. I like those beats, but I think overall it still feels like a fill-in story where I'm like kind of like itching to get back to the main thing, because while this is better Guillem March art than it usually is, it's still not like, I don't love it. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, that one of the podcasts I listen when they'll talk about movies, they're like, I'd like it more if it was better. And that's how I feel about Guillemar's art, right? Like, there's all these 9-panel grids, and then when it gets to the point where Diana with her lasso punches out Hephaestus, I would like it more if it was better, because the composition's there, but Diana looks weird, Hephaestus looks weird, you know, and it's this big moment, and it's the only, I believe it's the only full page panel, right? Everything else is 9 by 9, right? It's not by 9, you know what I mean?
It's 3 by 3 or a 9-panel grid, one or the other.
Yes, that one. Yeah, I'm going back through, and that's the only one. So I just wish the moment looked better, you know, and that's just Guillemar's art. So, but no, that last page I do think was the strongest for me when she talks about the anger and how do you go on, and then Bruce reaches out his hand to her. I thought those final 3 panels are really moving.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. It's not bad. What are you giving it, Matt?
Yeah, I'm gonna 7.5.
Yeah, I think I'm more of a 6.5 on this one.
Okay.
You know, I still don't love the art, and you know, it still feels a little bit like I'm waiting to get back to the main event. So there's still a little bit of that feeling throughout. But hey, Nightwing 126, Legacy number 313. Dan Waters writing with Francesco Francavilla on the art. So this is also a second half of a 2-parter. Although this one's a bit more baked into the overall story in this run, I would say. So yeah, we get more of the Maggie Sawyer side of things. She's kind of the main character of this little mini arc, and there's some great stuff in here that I really like. Obviously, this idea of the Hollow, Captain Hollow, character who's going around taking revenge on any cops who have betrayed other cops, kind of thing. It's not supernatural, you know. It turns out to be some corrupt cops who have got their hands on this old costume and are just using it as an excuse. Basically, this is the scapegoat to take revenge.
He's literally the spirit of corruption, and I love that concept for Bloodhaven, because right, Bloodhaven's supposed to be even more crooked than Gotham, and so the idea that the cops got together to bring this thing to life, which I do kind of like the idea that it's something they didn't come up with on their own, right? Like this was a legend amongst the cops, you know, but just the fact that it's just these guys, and it brings it back down. I thought that was a pretty good reveal.
Yeah, so you got that, and obviously Dick's looking into that. A lot of the story, though, in this one is actually more Maggie's personal life. She's meeting her girlfriend's daughter for the first time, and it's a lot of the kind of the social awkwardness of that, and trying to get to know her. And the daughter's very blunt about certain things, like, "Oh, you dating my mom," things like that. And then when she sees her badge, she's like, "Oh, my mom used to say not to trust the police." And like her mom's like, "Oh, well, yeah, but Maggie's like, that was a long time ago. Things are different in Bloodhaven now. You know, Maggie's one of the good ones, quote unquote."
I love that as one of the good ones. If you have to describe something as one of the good ones, it's very awkward.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I actually like is you get a quick flashback of the end of the previous issue with the going out the window and stuff with Nightwing, and it goes to Barbara and Dick talking about results in the lab or whatever. And what I really like is I feel like Francavilla typically has a lot of orange and blue, and I was laughing here because Dick's blue outfit and Barbara's orange hair were basically just fitting into his art style like perfectly, because this is what he always does.
I feel like that's why he took the job. He was like, "Wait, I get to Nightwing and Babs? They're literally blue and orange. This is perfect."
This is his wheelhouse. This is what he's good at.
Yep. Well, and also the green of whatever the computer's doing also offsets with it because it's not complementary, so it makes that stand out on the page even more. Just really good stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, basically they're deducing a bunch of stuff and saying, "Oh, whatever this outfit is, it's old. Like all the stuff that's on it, the fear toxin that used to be on it is ancient. All of its effects are gone. It's just it's a placebo. It's a mist effect and nothing more, basically, at this point." So there's more stuff with Maggie and the kid and the girlfriend. And one of the big things that comes up is one of the Ed 209 looking things from that are in Bloodhaven now walk past. And the girl gets scared, and Maggie's like, "Hey, you don't have to be scared. It's there to protect everyone. Good people like you and your mom, and the police who are trying to do their jobs." But that obviously becomes a big thing in this issue, is this idea of like her feeling guilt that like these things are scaring children. Like this idea of like making all the kids scared just to like feel safe is maybe a step too far. And of course, the fact that her job and her position, has like an assassination attempt. Captain Hollow or the men pretending to be him come after her this night. It puts this girl and her girlfriend in danger because they're held at gunpoint. The daughter's grabbed as a hostage at one point, and Nightwing, luckily comes in and saves the day. But it's kind of this like weird wake up call that just being like connected to her is, this is the potential here. And not only that, the fact that this is corrupt cops who have been fired, but they also point out that stuff they're using was in an evidence locker, meaning they have at least one person they still trust on the force that's like giving them stuff. So they've not completely cleaned house. There's still someone in there that's helping them.
It's still the corruption that's deep down. It's in the police force. It's almost baked in. And that's the commentary that I do like from Waters is like, so in a vacuum, the police are supposed to be these people that you can trust, right? But the more militarized they get and the scarier they are, and it makes it look like people that they start to look less like people, right? And more just like weapons. And here that actually takes the form of the Ed 209.
It's literal,
right? Like, yeah, it's meant to help, but it's not a person, right? It's not recognizable. So just the fact, like, when Maggie's like, it's not meant to be scary, but it's like, yeah, but it still is. And that's the problem. If we can't trust these people, then, it's just going to make things worse. So then the fact that the police, the corruption's so baked in even to these folks, like you said, they still have someone that's giving them stuff from the evidence locker. That's something that she's going to have to deal with as the commissioner and really go in deep. So I do like what the thread that Waters is running through here.
Yeah, the other thing I like here as well is the daughter starts saying how like Nightwing like helps protect the city. Maybe you should work with him more. And Maggie's like, well, we have worked with him, but he doesn't quite follow the rules all the time, so we can't always do that. And this leads to an interesting thing where after Nightwing shows up and saves the day, and all the art here is great because the hollow kind of like gas mask and all that looks very atmospheric in the art and all that. But after Nightwing saves the day and Maggie's talking to Nightwing back at the scene of the crime, of the house where they're all hiding out, like she's basically reiterating what the daughter said and saying, "Damn it, this is horrible. There's still corrupt cops. I really feel like I need someone to trust." And Dick says, "Sure would be nice." The implication being that maybe you should start to work with me a bit more. But Maggie kind of like just kind of starts yelling about why she doesn't just want to do that. It's like, hey, it's great that you're there, but we can't just always rely on the superheroes. We can't just always rely on the miracles that fall out of the sky. Like the people have to feel like they can take care of themselves, or it's not. It's kind of in almost the same way that like just relying on a bunch of robots doesn't work. Like you have to be able to feel like the people are able to take care of these things themselves. So yeah, and the ending's just kind of like further reiterating this idea. It's like a POV shot of whoever got the outfit out of the police station. So it feels like something we're going to come back to is whoever this cop was that did this.
Yep.
So no, I dug this a lot.
Yeah, I like that. And there's also when Maggie is talking with them at the kitchen table about about how Maggie learned to help people, and she was like, "Oh, a very special hero taught me," and it flashes over to Superman. And I just like that thread of Nightwing and Superman. For as much as Dick Grayson is Bruce's son, he's also not Superman's son exactly, but there's that almost uncle nephew kind of thing, and he's taken as much, well, not as much from Batman, but he's taken some from Superman as well. So like if Maggie can learn to trust, or if Maggie had trusted Superman, she can learn to trust Nightwing. It's down that way, but she's also right that we can't just rely on the supers, right? We got to be able to be the police force that people trust. So it's easy to do that with Superman because everybody loves Superman, right? But it's going to be harder when it's someone like Nightwing, when last creative team, right, they had someone impersonating him, and there's probably still some of that out there. So I like the, not confusion, what's the right word, the conundrum that she has as commissioner. So that just drove it home even more.
I really liked that it dealt with her personal life in this, and this idea that, like, you know, is this relationship going to survive this? Because, like, you know, bad people showed up to this woman's house and, like, held a gun up to her kid's head. Like, even though it's not technically Maggie's fault, like, she's going to attract this type of thing just by who she is and what her job is. So I think there's a kind of a tragedy element of this that makes it all have this kind of a tone, this, like, foreboding kind of element to it that just feels kind of sad. Like, it feels like there's no happy ending here for Maggie. And yeah, I don't know, it just adds, like, a vibe to it. And then you've got the fantastic art on top of that adds so much mood to it. Yeah, no, this was great. No, this was a great little two-parter for the run. Excited to see where we go next. I think there's a lot of good running themes that have been going throughout, and, you know, even you know, the previous stuff with the gangs, like, featured a lot of kids and a lot of, like, helping people who you know, aren't necessarily just goody two shoes either. Like, there's a lot of interesting layers to what Waters is doing with Bloodhaven right now.
Yeah. What I'm realizing with Waters from reading multiple books of his now is he's very much interested in the average person's perspective of things, right? Because we've gotten some of those in Dark Patterns. We got some of those in that Arkham book, right? In the Arkham, whatever that was called, with the 10-eyed man. He's very much interested in putting those in there with the perspective of the heroes. And I just feel like that's the overall theme here, is that, you know, we're seeing the heroes from the people's perspective, but then we're seeing the people from the heroes' perspective. And he balances that really, really well.
All right, what are you giving Nightwing?
I think it's a 9.
You know what? I hate to be boring. I've copied a lot of your ratings today, but that's a 9.
I think it's funny. I started off the show and we started rating things. Like, rating thing is stupid. I'm going to overrate, and it's come back to earth. And now we're lining up more than I'm comfortable with, right? So it's just funny every time we line up.
All right. Absolute Flash, issue 3, Jeff Lemire writing with Nick Robles on the art. All right, so we're still, you know, playing with, like, the headspace a little bit, and, like, you know, his mind's racing and flashing back to what happened with Barry, and basically we get the idea the reason why Barry's body was in that cave before is because basically it was picked up in the upstream of, like, Wally running at super speed. He sort of dragged it with him in, like, the current, if you will. At least that's what I think it was saying here. So I think that's pretty, like, weirdly horrific in a lot of ways. So, but yeah. So the interesting thing here is that the last issue ended with the Rogues unleashing Grodd, which, you know, obviously turned out to be very different than classic Grodd. And this monkey version of Grodd goes looking for Wally and finds him in a barn where he's sort of taking shelter for the time being. But they end up bonding in a weird way, where Grodd does telepathically link to Wally, right? And it's kind of like Wally's big moments are all, like, you know, we're seeing him talking to his dad from before, when he got hit with the lightning, talking to Barry, and then remembering some tragic stuff like his mum passing away. And that kind of links up with Grodd remembering his mother, seemingly. That's what it looks like anyway. And there's kind of a bonding thing here where, as it goes on and the Rogues come attacking, it seems like, no, Grodd's helping Wally. They've kind of become like a pair, where they're realizing that they're both being mistreated and that they're both being hunted. So, yeah, you know, they kind of communicate telepathically, and obviously the letter in here does a good job of, like, showing this like little border around their bubbles when they're doing telepathic speech, which is kind of cool. Plus, we also get the line, "The effing monkey's gone rogue," which is funny.
Yep.
So that's neat.
I was not expecting to literally, like, I will defend Absolute Grodd with my life. That is a damn adorable monkey. All right. And we all know I'm a big monkey guy, right? I love Kong. I love Grodd. I wasn't expecting him to have this tragic backstory. It trauma bond with Wally.
For the record, neither of those examples are monkeys, but continue.
Yes, I know, but still. This one actually is, though. Prehensile tail. Looks like it's a New World monkey. Don't know what kind, because he's blue now. Looks like maybe. Anyways, I'm not getting into that. I'm not going to do taxonomy on the show right now. But yeah, he's just a science experiment gone wrong, and we just get the tragic backstory of him being ripped from his mom, and you know, and how that overlaps with Wally visiting his mom in her, hospital bed, and then at the grave when he's real little. So just this trauma bond that gets him there. And then that all builds to the monkey's gone rogue by Cold. And I was just like, oh my God, I think I have a new favorite absolute character.
Yeah.
And here he is.
So yeah, I mean, Wally does fight back. He ends up throwing his first proper like super speed punch to Captain Boomerang. And he sticks with Grodd, and they go back to where Barry's body is, and basically for the first time since all this happened, he feels some sort of level-headedness to everything. All of a sudden, the narration boxes aren't overlapping anymore. He's realizing that his old life is gone, and he's finding some comfort in accepting that because he was kind of struggling with that before. So he actually takes the Flash suit that was on Barry's body for himself. So the end of the issue is him fully suited up for the first time, running at super speed, and the little Grodd is like got his arms wrapped around his neck with a big smile on his face. So
I don't know, but what's it called in a video game where you loot the body? I think that's just looting a body.
Just looting, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very funny that that's where he gets his first suit. It's not a dead man. Who we think is dead. I think it's going to be a little bit more complicated because of the idea of the Speed Force and what it is. Because it's still, he says he still feels like Barry's talking to him, right? But is that his memory? Is that something coming through the Speed Force? It's still unclear. Also, one of the techs that's working with the Rogues is named, or not the Rogues, with Wally's dad is Thawne, right? We get that name.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm wondering how much that's going to play in. But yeah, I definitely, it feels like we this is the first big step in him becoming more Flash-like, right? Him taking on this suit, and with Grodd, his thoughts are seemingly more controlled. It's almost like it's his emotional support monkey. So we'll see how he goes. But yeah, he finally looks like, what I would expect a Flash to look like.
I mean, I think this is still the weakest Absolute book. It's an easy read for sure, and I do think there's a couple of moments here. I think Grodd being this friendly character, this ally of Wally here, at least to begin with, is an interesting change. But I do think the whole him running after like the disaster at the lab and like the rogues chasing him, it does kind of feel like that's not advanced that much in 3 issues, bizarrely. When I think about like what's happened, there's been a lot of like flashing back to the moment where the accident happened, but ultimately this is the first real development since he's been out like on the run from them, because it's really just been the rogues showing up and then him running away. With some good storytelling, sort of like mechanics and some good art, of course, but like, this feels like we're starting to step towards there being like more concrete plot details, and I think that's maybe the one thing that all the other Absolute books have got it beat in, is that there's a lot more intrigue in what the stories are in all the other books. I think that's the one thing this is lacking right now compared to them. But it's not bad though. I mean, if this is the weakest Absolute book, then we're in a pretty good place. Yeah. So
but yeah, I like that whole aspect of now we're kind of through the incident. Where are we going now? If we're still kind of holding in place by the next issue, then I can think I could start to be worried a little bit more. Right. Yeah. But now it feels like we're on the road to more progression, and I feel like that might just be a Lemire thing. Because we were saying the same about his Justice Society, that we were feeling that we weren't moving along, and we were just kind of in place. But with that one, there were so many different characters juggling this, that, and the other. Here, it just seems like you said, we're in one place for the first 3 issues. But here he's got the suit, he's got the goggles, emotional support monkey, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, the suit just kind of feels like whatever. Like, okay, he decides to pick up the suit from Barry, fine, I guess. Like, I'll just roll with it, but it doesn't feel like a natural evolution necessarily. But hey, I mean, they are still pretty solid though. The layouts are good, the way it flows. There's a lot of good techniques in there. We talked about it a bit more in the last issue, so I won't go into it too much here. But what are you giving Absolute Flash?
I'm gonna give this a straight 7.
Yeah, I think a 7 out of 10 sounds about right. I agree with that. All right, cool. Batman and Robin, Year 1, Issue 7, Mark Waid writing with Chris Samnee on the art. So a little bit of a break before we get to this issue. It was nice to have it back. Obviously, we were really building up Batman's awareness of Clayface in the last part of this. And this issue begins with said Clayface getting chewed out by Grimaldi for leaving Batman alive, which, Clayface keeps pointing out, I wasn't paid to kill Batman. Like, that wasn't part of my job description. So he's not very amused at his answers. And he's also not very amused that at the end of the scene, Clayface changes his face to look like him. And he yells and, like, you think that's funny? And, like, kicks him out and, like, hey, you're on thin ice. Go do what you've been told. Not
amused. Not amused. What's his name?
Grimaldi.
Yeah. The general. That's what I was trying to. I couldn't remember his rank. Like, I want to go with the captain, but he's not a captain. He's a general. The general was not amused, and then he's really mean to his dad. You
don't remember that scene from a few issues ago where he was literally had his dad at the edge of the building, and he was like, "Oh, I could just throw you off here. Like, I could just do this anytime I want."
Yeah, but here it's felt more personal as he's standing over him, and I don't know. Tell him you served to bear witness to a triumph you could never achieve. Like, man, just you should have speak your dad in basketball. You don't got to do this. But yeah, I do like that's his motivation, is he wants to be better than his dear old dad. He'll take over crime in Gotham.
Are you suggesting that he wheel his dad onto a basketball court and just start throwing balls at the hoops while he sits there?
No, look, man. There's no rule in the book that says a man in a wheelchair can't play basketball. All right. But yeah, no, just his whole.
But he's not just in a wheelchair, though. He doesn't move. He doesn't even smile.
No, I know. I couldn't pass up the Airbud meme, But yeah, he's just very. I don't know. Like, all the villains are evil. This seems like there's just a little bit extra. And who knows what his dad did? Maybe he had a terrible upbringing, and it's all justified. Well, I don't know.
They get into
Waid's did a very good job at making him a villain.
They get into some of it later, though. They do talk about some of this. When they talk about the backstory of it, why basically he abandoned his son and got rid of him, and that he took that personally, shall we say. Some Grimaldi rose up through the ranks, and came back with a good eye for politics, a good eye for leadership, and kind of took over everything. The big thing revealed at the end of this scene, though, is that Two-Face bugged the old man's wheelchair, so he's listening to every conversation, and we also hear that they're going to kill Clayface after he's served his purpose. Like, that's the whole plan here. So we get like a montage, effectively, of Batman and Robin, taking out various bad guys, looking into things over the course of a week, and then they're done. And they're talking about getting food and whatnot. But Batman goes to rescue Bert and Ellie, right? One of the crime bosses.
Right.
And said,
Helena's dad, right? Traditionally?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Well,
because now Helena is a Wayne, right? Is Bertelli still around?
Helena's not a Wayne. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and the Huntress that was running around a while ago, right? She was Helena, but she was a Wayne. That was Catwoman, Batman at the time. Time displaced. We haven't really seen Huntress around, have we?
Okay, right. But you're confusing things here. Right, yes. And Batman, Catwoman, yes, there was a Helena Wayne from the future, right? But that's pretty out of continuity. That's not counting that. Huntress in Gotham has been Bert and Ellie for decades.
Yes. But have we had that version in a while?
It's been a little while, but I don't think it's been that long that you can
okay.
be that
but she's still around, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if this, okay.
I don't think she's been written out of continuity, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, that's what I'm wondering. I'm just making sure.
I don't
timey-wimey, but
I don't.
But anyways, I mean, one of the Gotham crime families, right? She
was in that book post Rebirth. There was Batgirl and the Birds of Prey early Rebirth, and she was in that. To give you an example. Right.
Well, she was also part of the tower, right? She was the one they sent in. That's the last time I remember seeing her.
That's right. Yeah, that's like a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So, anyways, so after they go into the restaurant, and again, Waid has Robin give another really good quip. He goes, I'm not really feeling like Italian. And Batman's like, we're not here for dinner. We're here to do work. Which I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, there's a bomb under the table. He basically tries to... I mean, he kind of threatens that he won't disarm it, but he's like, hey, this was put here by Grimaldi. He wants all you mobs fighting each other. You know, basically declare peace, stop the infighting, stop the fighting with the other gangs. He's the real enemy. He wants you to take each other out, so stop it. And he basically convinces Bertinelli by letting the bomb get to 1 second to like promise that he'll try and calm everything down. So that's kind of that big scene. And then we kind of get into like Dick at school and the social services ladies like there to like keep an eye on him. And there's this bully kid that tries to pick a fight, and Dick like imagines punching the shit out of him, but he kind of is like, crap, I have to hold back, I can't. Especially since that lady's there. But then she notices some bruises on his arms, and he's like, oh, I got into a fight in school, and like the teacher's like, there's no fights here, our kids are all well behaved. So Dick intentionally writes a note to provoke the bully to come over and punch him, so that it looks like it is indeed stuff that's happened on the playground. Which I really love, because he's got like the frozen peas on his face in the next scene, and Bruce is like, I'm proud of you for thinking on your feet, Dick. That was really smart thinking to convince them that was a playground issue. I don't know. I got amused by this entire sequence of events.
There was just the punch, right? And then he goes, see, geez, what a guy got to do to get believed around here. And it's like, bro, you just manufactured all of that. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, but I mean, I get it. It is fun watching him having to try and skirt this line of being convincing to this social services lady, but obviously he naturally just gets a lot of like bruises and stuff from being Robin. So it's like, how do you explain this? So you've got that. Then there's a scene where Two-Face goes to see Clayface and remarks on him trying to look like Two-Face, and so they have a bit of a conversation. But he's basically like, hey, they're going to betray you. Grimaldi's not got a cure for you. You know, like, it's not going to happen. If anything, you know, he's planning on killing you. Yada yada yada. And he says he can prove it. So he's like, I'm listening. So you know, so that's developing. That's going somewhere. But the big end of the issue is that there's some guys working from Grimaldi going after someone on a hit list, someone with money that could, you know, rival Grimaldi in some way. And they kill this guy, this Jim Krause, and then the next name on the list is Bruce Wayne, which was set up earlier on because Bruce mentioned that he noticed he was being followed by someone, and he was letting it play out to see what happens. So they're coming for Bruce Wayne. They have no idea he's Batman, of course. They're just going after him for his status in society or whatnot. But that's what we end the issue on.
And this gets pretty dark though too, because it seems like they're going fishing with this kid. The Krause guy that gets killed, because he's at the table too. You know, so really going there. Grimaldi ain't playing. So, but yeah, no, just wait. This was so nice to have back, because this is a fun Batman and Robin book, and just the interplay between Bruce and Dick here. It's really becoming more what we expect, as Bruce is learning to deal with Dick, and Dick is learning to deal with Bruce. So him being like, I'm proud of you for figuring all that together. You know, keeping your cover. So their relationship's progressing as well, which is nice.
Yeah, Bruce has learned to use Dick effectively.
Yes, he has. Also, Alfred saying that they can't have peas with dinner because the peas have been used. And we get that the dialogue bubble that just says, you know, comedy, and it's got like the icicles hanging from it. Yeah. You know, just a joy to read.
Yeah, no, there's a great tone to this book. It has that kind of old school, like we're in a period piece kind of thing that Samnee's art really brings to the table. It's very expressive. I mean, his art's been fantastic in this entire series, and you know, obviously, I think we were happy they took the month or two off to like let him keep up to date so that he could do every issue, because it would be lesser without it. It's really solid stuff. And, you know, like even just that last page with the colors popping against the silhouetted, like, you know, gunman who just killed this family. It just, you know, like there's a mood to it. All the stuff with Grimaldi arguing at the start. There's just a lot of noir kind of like playfulness to the way everything looks, and it kind of fits the it really enhances the story. Like sometimes art just is good enough, and sometimes it actually raises the story up. And I think that's what it's doing in Batman and Robin. So, what are you giving Batman and Robin year one?
I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
Oh yeah, I think I'll agree with that. I think I'd be going with the 9 if it just felt like it was more of a. Like, I think everything in here is good, but they do, like, it's fairly separate plot things. You know, it's like Emeraldi and Clayface, then Clayface and Two-Face is one thing, and then Batman and Robin or in Dick stuff's like kind of separate things. But that's like a minor quibble. I'm basically just saying this is why it's not like amazing, but it's great. So there you go.
Gotcha.
The New Gods, issue 6, Ram V writing with Evan Cagle and Filipe Andrade on the art. So, this is about the Black Racer coming after Light Ray, who should be dead. He kind of died in helping everyone escape New Genesis, and this is actually a slightly different issue in that normally they've been like the first little chunk have been the guest artist, and then most of it's been the regular. Here it flips it, where most of the issue is the guest artist, and it's mostly this Black Racer and Light Ray stuff, before we get a little bit of like present day art at the end with the regular artist. But there's some interesting stuff in here. So the whole idea that Black Racer's been chasing Light Ray basically forever, and now it's finally time to catch him because he's technically dead. But this idea that there's this darkness that's infecting the stream, because they're basically going to the source, and this idea that Black Racer basically demands that the source put Light Ray back to help fight like whatever this is, this thing that's like infecting everything and coming for them, is a little bit uplifting. I think this idea that Black Racer's willing to kind of like vouch for him is kind of interesting, given that Black Racer's effectively a Grim Reaper.
Well, it was the fact that too that Light Ray, since he was a kid, had this fascination to what happens after you die, right? Yeah. Because we get a bit of the backstory that he was with Orion when they were kids, and they uncovered these people or these things from Apocalypse that were holed up on New Genesis. And even though they were kids, Orion held his own, but Light Ray was beaten severely, and they thought that would be it. But through that, it showed his character that he got up and he still wanted to become like a hero, right? He chose that life. And since then, he had this fascination with the Black Racer. And is he the one that can outrace death, right? And they do this thing where with Rambi and Filipe Andrade that they turn Light Ray into this embodiment of hope, right? And like, what does that mean with death, right? That if you give the concept of death this little bit of hope, what does that mean, right? Does he get to help it along? Does he still just do his job? Does he bring it there? But, there's just a whole lot of levels going out of this book that's about warring gods.
Yeah, I mean, he goes to the source, right? The idea that the light at the end of the tunnel is the source, and he goes to it and says, look, I was supposed to get him, I'm the Black Racer, but not like this, not with this like dark energy that's went after him. Like if anyone can hear me in there, if you can bring him back, you should, because if you don't, then I'll do something about it. And then we get the really ominous couple of pages where we go to like Van Horn, Texas, and this character, this unknown character wakes up. Clearly, like something, like maybe this dark energy has infected him, maybe, or something, because it feels like it definitely looks ominous the way his eyes are kind of like looking in some of those panels, but.
Well, and just whatever that energy is radiating off of him, because everything is like a really cool blue. Yeah. But there's like this red that's coming off of him. That's very creepy.
Yeah, it's very muted, like a lot of this, because all this art's watercolor, so it's all very muted colors throughout. But yeah, we see on the TV that something's crashing through space, and it's the ship that the New Genesis ship that with the survivors on it. So, and this is where Superman's just confronted Orion, and they see the ship coming down. So like Superman and the Justice League go to like help catch the ship and like sort of like bring it down safely and slowly, which is a fun enough ending. It is kind of funny though that we ended that last issue with like Superman stepping in as the cliffhanger, and then we get legitimately 3 pages at the end of like continuing that part of it. But it does feel like now that they're here on Earth and like everyone's kind of intermingling, that we're going to maybe like everyone's going to maybe get up to speed and what's actually going on here and what the stakes are. And you know, when they, I mean, I assume Orion and Barda and Scott finding out what happened on New Genesis is going to be a bit of a shock. So I'm curious to see how that plays out as well.
I was gonna say, I really like at the end where Orion's just like, you know, they're from New Genesis, something's gone wrong. And Scott's like, they need help. And Superman just turns around and goes, I know, we got it covered. And it's the Justice League, and they go into, you know, do what they need to do. And I like that confidence from Superman and you know, everybody, even Ollie, who's there. He's like, man, I'll catch any falling debris with these anti-grav arrows. And I was like, buddy, what are you gonna do to get to spaceship with the arrows? But you know what? I like your confidence here. And it just kind of shows, you know, what you know, this world is capable of with our heroes.
He could have stayed at home.
He could have. I mean, you got Wonder Woman and the Amazons, you know, building up something over here. But Ollie's just there in his hood. And I'm just like, what are you gonna do? But all right, he's there for moral support.
Yeah, I think you know, the thing that this book's been doing over and over again is it's been making parts of the story feel like epic in a way, and I think this like story sort of like, I don't know if you even want to call it the afterlife per se, but like, you know, this like void that the Black Racer and Light Ray are in when all that stuff's playing out, it does feel very ethereal. It feels like we're doing something bigger than life. So you know, as this sort of stakes and this idea, you know, I think, you know, this is making me care more about a character like Light Ray than I think anything I've ever read has. Now, I've not read a lot of the old, you know, Kirby stuff around like that, so I mean, you know, maybe that would do a lot for me as well. But this felt like it was really selling me on the idea of who this character is, and even Highfather, like seemingly being sad that Light Ray might be gone and being told that Light Ray might be gone, I think is good stuff. Also, really simple little idea at the end, or towards the end, when Black Racer's talking to the Source. I do love that as he says his final line, you actually see the Source from the reflection on his like visor. And it's this idea that he's waiting for a response, and that this is kind of represents the core, the brain of whatever he's looking at. I don't know, there's just something very kind of otherworldly and alien about whatever the Source is exactly. I don't know, it feels big. So
yeah, well, definitely they're mythic at the same time too, because like I don't think I mean, again, I haven't read the Kirby stuff. I don't think I've ever seen a representation of the Source, right? You just hear the New Gods talk about it. So the fact here that we're getting just even in a reflection, and like you said, it looks like kind of like this brain that has outstretched, not tentacles, but you know what I mean, like outstretched pieces in the reflection of Black Racer's visor. So yeah, it makes it seem like this big, larger than life concept. But yeah, no, really, really good stuff. Yeah,
no, I mean the book continues to be kind of special, and is, you know, I'm glad it seems to be doing well digitally at the very least, if not as well physically, because it's nice that Ram V's name's starting to sell books. You know, just based on his name alone, rather than having to be a big character to pull it off. So no, it's good stuff. Is it my favorite issue? Probably not, because like some of the all the fighting on New Genesis in the last issue was just such an epic feeling. Or the backstory as to how, what, you know, that this new kid, this new god, how that came to be. That was such an epic sort of odyssey of a story. But it's amazing how big and epic everything in this has felt like throughout the whole thing. So, what are you giving New Gods, Matt?
I'm at 8.5.
9.
Oof, all right.
I think. Yeah, I think I'm going with 9.
Yes.
So there you go. Black Canary, Best of the Best, issue 6, Tom King writing with Ryan Sook. So as I said earlier, this just didn't get added to the list the week it came out. I read it at the time. I read it that week, but somehow I just forgot to talk about it on the show. But Matt just read it as well, because he had to catch up, because that was the week you weren't here. So we can talk about the final issue of this now, which, you know, there's some interesting stuff here that I like. Obviously, it results in Canary effectively winning the fight. Everyone knows she's won, and then she still says, I surrender, to technically adhere to the deal she made with Savage.
Yes, but also I would always say in a type of match where you have to surrender, if you've gotten beaten to the point where you can't say it, that counts as a surrender. So I don't know. There's some really weird rules into this fight. I don't think you can beat the mess out of the person and be like, all right, I quit.
I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, exactly who's running this fight? What are the rules for this fight? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it works for the story in that Canary still was able to honor the wishes of her mother, but also save her mother, right? She wanted her to win, but part of it was that she would have to, do the surrender. And she manages to do both.
And spiritually, she does win. And that's the thing. Shiva's always going to know she lost, really. But she still says, I surrender. The fact that the disrespect from Shiva through this fight, right? She rips Canary's blonde wig off, which I didn't realize that Dinah still wears a wig, right? I figured by this point she'd be dyeing her hair, right? But she goes and she rips the wig off. Your memory is absolutely terrible. We talked about this in the last issue.
No. Yes. I just mean here, by this point, you're going into a fight, right?
No, but we saw her take off.
It was just one of those things.
Yeah, but we saw her take off the wig when she was training with her mum, which is the last last few weeks. Remember the panel where they're sitting in the forest where the dad proposed? And both their wigs were off?
My memory's complete nose. I forgot about that scene.
And we even talked about the fact that, that's weird, she's wearing a wig still. I feel like that's something that wasn't actually in continuity until King's decided to put it there.
You know what? I probably said the same exact thing. If you go back 2 months ago to that issue, I probably said the same exact thing there.
You probably did. Yeah.
However, it works with what the story that King wants to be told, because it is this big disrespect. It's like Shiva is disrespecting the memory of her mother, and that's kind of what kicks her almost into overdrive, right? And she pulls herself up, and we get this cross cut with her, looking at a wig, right, as she she rips it off, right, and it's after she had come back from the hospital visiting with her mom, right, and she destroyed the kitchen and she ripped the wig off, and it's just sitting there, and she's addressing the wig like it's her mom. So just getting that comparison here of after Shiva had ripped it off, and then we get that whole scene. It's perfectly balanced.
Yeah, she wrecks that kitchen like Tommy Wiseau. The whole thing. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the wig, the fact that she has the blonde hair like her mom, it's kind of almost like something she chose to always have, to be like her mom. It's like the part that's there, like visibly the whole time. So, like you say, her having the wig ripped off makes her get back up and determined to continue the fight. It's the whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the art in the fight is pretty solid. It has been throughout the entire book. Sook's a solid artist. But yeah, we get her, winning with a big kick to the face. She was beaten to a pulp, and she still says, I surrender. And the final scene with the mom when she goes to the hospital, and it's like, doctor's saying it's a miracle, and obviously Canary knows what she's done. She's engineered this. But when she says, hey, what about the fight, the match, what happened? And she says, I lost. And her mum just smiles and says, oh, that's okay. We'll get him next time. And it just kind of feels like it wasn't like a life or death thing for you. You were never going to admit before the fight that it wasn't going to be a big deal if I lost, but it was never going to be something that made her judge you or made Canary feel,
of course,
little or anything like that. So,
I also, the way that she wins is with that super kick, basically. And I just could not hear HBK's theme after it. So, just again, the art here sells it completely. Just the body language, with the kick and the way that Shiva's falling back. This is a well done moment.
Yeah. And of course, the book ends on our favorite pages, which is the two commentators saying a shit ton of words.
I would say that's my biggest problem with this issue. Is I wish it just had ended with Dinah and her mom in the hospital, and her going, "We'll get him next time," and it's like, "Yeah, we will." you know, and then I get to turn the page up to see these two big old heads and continue in the nonsense. Yeah. Which I would say that's probably my ultimate criticism of the book is it's way too wordy for what it is. And I don't know if that's King, what he's trying, but I could have done with less of the commentary here.
Yeah, it's only wordy with the commentators. Every other character speaks a nice normal amount. It's if anything, it's like it's opposite from wordy. It's just the commentators, which I get what he's going for. He's going for these commentators who feel like they have to fill space, so they're just always talking. They're always making up drama to try and sell the story of the match. And of course, part of the subtext or the layers here is that they are so wrong constantly about everything they're saying about what's actually going on in the match and what's actually going through their heads. Because at the end here, or at least at one point after the surrender moment happens, is they basically say, "Oh, we thought she was maybe going to have it, but of course, maybe like it was. We got the sense of hope, but it was always going to be Shiva, even though Shiva was clearly just beat and is lying unconscious in the middle of the ring." They have no idea what they were actually. They were just trying to sell a match. They were trying to like make it entertaining. So,
do we think that if Dinah hadn't had this deal with Savage, do we think it would have gone 6 rounds? Do we think, because clearly she was holding back trying to get to the 6 rounds, right?
Well, I wouldn't say she was holding back. I would say kind of the opposite, actually. I would say that because getting to round 6 meant she could maybe save her mum, that gave her the fire and the determination to survive till round 6. I don't think she was necessarily holding back. I think if anything, you could argue that if she was only in a match for exhibition reasons, that she might actually go down in round 3 or something like that. But because she had the reason, she had the personal motivation to get to round 6.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Do we think that, because we know she outlasts Shiva, right? Because she has to, because it's for her mom. Right, but we think if this was just a regular, do we think that Canary could have won the fight in 3? Like, if she had wanted to?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think it's the opposite. I think she would have lost. Yeah. I think she only had the determination to win and the fire to win because she had that...
Because of mom.
Yeah, that reason. She had that reason where she has to do it.
Okay. I mean, just in the what we were getting in Batgirl and then with here, just the theme of moms and the relationships and whatever. And Dinah here with her mom, and that's being her driving force, and then we're seeing that with Cass, and then the pages of Batgirl. I do think it's having Shiva and Canary here, it's a nice compliment.
It's not even just a question of like the fire and her either. It's the idea that her mother even put her through her training regimen as part of like building up to this fight, and I think this idea of that her mother is like, if she was just given this fight for some other reason, I don't think she would have trained as hard. She wouldn't have done all the things her mother made her do to train for the fight. So even just on like a physical sense, she probably wouldn't have been in the same shape for it. But it's...
Yeah, that could have been too.
Yeah. No, I mean, this was a good bit. I mean, it is probably in the lesser end of Tom King's like miniseries, but that's only because the standard is so goddamn high. This is not going to compare or measure up to a Doctor Strange or a
Danger Street,
Strange Adventures, Rorschach. Like, all those books are much better, but this, I think this is better. It's definitely better than Jenny Sparks, which is definitely on the lower end.
Yeah, all the stuff with Dinah and her mom, I think, really push it towards that, closer to that level. Because I definitely think that between this and then Wonder Woman this week is Tom King, when it comes to parent-child relationships, he has a lot to say, right? And so we got the stuff in Wonder Woman with Zeus and Ares, and with here we get the opposite about the parental love, and then the love from the child for the mom, and bringing that fire. And she just wanted to be her mom, right? She wanted to make her proud, and just so I like all of that stuff a lot more than the action-y side of things, But I understand why he had to break it up the way that he did and the way that they sell it with calling it, best of the best, and each issue's around. But I definitely enjoyed a lot more of what he had to say about that parent-child relationship than anything else.
Yeah, no, I mean the character stuff was the the human element. That's what was exciting. As soon as we got to that point where, oh, she's maybe going to throw the fight to save her mum, that was a great reveal. And that was definitely the emotional through line throughout the entire thing. And that was the suspense. It wasn't, oh, can she win? It was, is she going to choose to win or choose to throw it? It was that moral kind of dilemma of what to pick that was the interesting part. And I do think that was a good hook. But
well, I also love, too, that she doesn't take the dive. Because she does beat Shiva, like you said. She'll always know that she beat Shiva. But in the record, she lost because she surrendered. So... but yeah, it did. She didn't have to take the dive, but she did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think that she probably would have taken the dive if it wasn't for the sort of the insulting part that you was tied to her mother. I think that, like you say, that wig moment, it felt like, oh no, she's going down. Like, I'll surrender, but she's going down. Admittedly, which is not to say that she had made her mind up that she was going to do that before then. I think the moment she finally says, I surrender, she's still deciding if she's going to say it. I don't think she makes the choice, 10 minutes ago. I think this is something that she is struggling with all up until the fight, all throughout the fight. And it's not until that moment where she finally screams it, where she finally accepts that she's going to say it.
Right, because her mom didn't raise a quitter. So it is this. It's almost as it's not in her nature. So for her to make that decision, it does. And it feels like this Herculean task for her to do. So but yeah, that wig moment was really huge. But yeah, no, again, Tom King still pretty much knows what he's doing, because even a lesser Tom King, it ended up being, like you said, it's better than Jenny Sparks. But yeah, I'd put this in about the mid-range of the things that I've enjoyed that he's read or written.
Yeah. All right, what are you rating the Black Canary best of the best?
I'll give us a straight 8.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. Yeah, 8 out of 10 sounds good to me. Which will take us out of the final part of the show, where we pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, top 5 books, the usual shebang. And I think we'll exclude Black Canary from this because we're only doing it this week because I was an idiot and forgot to do it the week it came out. So
that's fair. That makes choosing a moment a lot easier now. So
okay, all right. Well, in that case, what was your panel / moment?
All right. So South up in the running, I did like an absolute flash, the Wally Grodd moment where they meet and link up. I like that a lot. And in Superman Unlimited, a lot of the stuff with him going up to deal with the kryptonite and all that, and the way that he's trying to hold back the asteroid and whatnot. But mine's gonna be from World's Finest, and it's gonna be I could not guess what she was gonna say with each word. I thought it was a super solid moment.
Sure, yeah, that's a good one. I might even be tempted to pick the Alfred moment, honestly. Just the look on Batman and Dick's face, and them sharing that moment was a really good idea. Is there anything else that's speaking to me, though? Anything else that's speaking to me? No, I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picking.
Yeah, emotionally, like visually, the Babs page in Detective Comics with the stuff reflected in her glasses, I thought that was strong too. But the emotional or the comedy and stuff hit in World's Finest.
Yeah. All right. As for cover of the week, there's a few good ones, of course. I quite like the regular Detective cover, for sure. And the regular Nightwing cover is pretty solid as well. There's also a good Francavilla Nightwing cover, which it's almost winning. It's almost winning, but I think the cover I'm going to pick is actually one of the variants for Superman Unlimited. It's the Sebastian Fimura variant, which is the close up of the Superman chest with the bullets bouncing off of it. Just really beautiful, really well painted and toned and all that. Good stuff. What are you picking?
Yeah, that was so good that I bought it at the shop. And I found that one. So that's what I picked up. So that was going to be my pick, but for the sake of switching it up, because we keep lining up on things, there was a Batman and Robin cover by Declan Shelvey that I think is worth mentioning because it looks like one of the classic covers. I can't tell you which one, but it's got Robin in the pose. swinging with the rope with Batman behind him with the cape out. I think it's good. But you mentioned the Superman Unlimited one. That one's super strong. I love that one. But Jorge Fornes has a Nightwing cover that's got the Nightwing logo made up by a bunch of doves. And he's, Nightwing's in the foreground, and then just the negative space of the doves is black and all this other stuff. It just looks really cool, and it's Jorge Fornes. So that's one you might pick.
All right, cool. Art of the week.
This is the tough one, right? Because we got Francavilla for Nightwing. We got Garbett for Detective. Robles for Absolute Flash is pretty strong. The team for New Gods works out in a really good way. But then we also have Samnee, right? I think I covered all my bases here.
Yeah.
And this is where it's really tough to pick, right? But for me, it really comes down to Francavilla or Garbett. Because we always pick Samnee. Samnee's good. And for the mood and the tone that it set for me, I'm going to give it to Garbett for Detective Comics.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, those are great options. Either one would easily win on many weeks. But I still got to go Samnee, I think. I think just in terms of...
Yeah.
Because Francavilla's stuff looks fantastic, but there's still the odd panel where a face looks a little wonky or something, right? But the art scheme, the general vibe of it's fantastic. Garbett's art was great. Samnee's art is pretty impeccable. There's never a flaw. There's never something where I'm like, oh, this one thing's off. And it just adds tonally so much to the vibe of the book. So I gotta go Samnee, but there was a lot of good choices to pick from this week. So cool. All right, top 5 books, Matt. Go.
Okay, so we're gonna go number 1, Nightwing. 2, Batman and Robin Year 1. 3, New Gods. 4, Detective Comics. And 5. Oh, what else did I give? Forgot what I gave World's Finest. Yeah, I guess I'll get 5 to World's Finest.
All right. My number 1 is... Oh, this is tough. I'll probably just eke it out to Nightwing slightly. Then number 2 is Batman and Robin Year 1. Number 3, New Gods. Number 4, Detective Comics. And then number 5... I'll say Superman Unlimited, just purely because it at least got my interest peaked for where it's going. So I'll give that the honorary 5th slot. But that is that. I'll tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics. Next week we have Batman 160, The Return of Hattush. We have Absolute Wonder Woman issue 8. We have Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 3. Superman 26, Justice League Unlimited issue 7. Green Arrow 24, Green Lantern 23, The Flash issue 21, Harley Quinn 51, Mr. Terrific Year 1 issue 1, Metamorpho, The Element Man issue 6, and then Peacemaker presents The Vigilante Eagle double feature issue 3, plus a bunch of facsimiles and reprints and whatnot. But that's what's coming out. So pretty exciting enough week in and of itself, plus some Patreon books from myself next week as well. So that's what's coming. But that is the show, everyone. That has been Comics from the Multiverse. So if you like the show, please do like, subscribe, all the usual things on YouTube. Of course, you can rate the podcast, but more than anything else, if you want to support with a little bit of money, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep the show coming over there. Every little bit helps from any source, so thank you very much. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.